Upsizing a city like Toronto is not like it used to be. In fact, it's fairly difficult right now. And the reason why is that most people that are making this move are trying to go from a condo property to a freehold property. And selling that condo property is not the easiest in today's market. And then they're going to buy the freehold property and they might be competing on it. So it's like going from one segment of the market that's hard to sell, going to a segment of the market that's hard to buy. There's a lot of things that they would need to figure out. I'd say almost half the calls I've received so far in 2025 are people in this position, and we've successfully helped a lot of people upsize here in the city of Toronto. So if you are someone in that position or you know one in that position, make sure to send them this video so they don't make a mistake along the way that they're going to regret. My name's Tom Storey. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to like this video, get subscribed for future videos. You can also book a call with me or my team in the first link in the description. Okay, so I've talked about the property ladder for a long time here on this channel, and the simple idea is get into the market with what you can afford, buy that first property. After a few years, maybe your salary has increased, maybe the value of that property has gone up. You've built equity because of the leverage that you have in the real estate market, and it allows you to get to the next property. And that is exactly what I did. But I'm also fully aware that as I was doing it, the steps up that ladder were probably a little bit closer and a little bit easier to get to. So I'd like to spend some time in this video talking through the things that I wish I knew as I was starting my real estate journey going up that property ladder. Because I know there's a lot of people here in the city of Toronto that have outgrown their space and they're just not quite sure what to do to make the next step happen. I've got 5 things I think all upsiders need to know in today's marketplace. Number 1 is the timeline. This is the most common question that I get when I meet with people. They think like, I want to make this move, but maybe my low mortgage rate, I have another 8 months to a year on it, and I'm just not sure when I want to do this. So to answer this question, I'm just going to tell you my personal experience. Now, I upsized 2 years ago now. It wasn't from a condo to a house. There was a step in the middle there, but it was from a townhouse to a house. And when you're trying to upsize, let's think about kind of how the market works. So when the market is going up and everything is increasing in value, percentage-wise, the more expensive properties are just becoming even more expensive. And we've seen that, right? The price gap that we've seen in terms of average condo price to average freehold property type, basically over the last 5 years. So in my personal experience, when I sold the property, the townhouse that I had, I sold it end of 2022, December of 2022, actually. And if I had sold in the peak, the craziness earlier that year where everyone was winning the lottery, I would have probably realistically got like, I don't know, $100,000 to $150,000 more than I sold in December of that same year. However, the next property that I purchased in the area that I actually wanted to live in, and keep in mind, this was when prices were dropping every single month pretty rapidly. So there was a lot of things I had to consider in terms of getting into the market. I bought my next house for about $400,000 less than a recent property sold in the peak of the market in the area that I went. So even though I sold my property for less, I also bought for a lot less. And that's the conversation and the thought process that I think a lot of upsizers have to consider. If you're not happy with the price of your current property, and in most circumstances, it's a condominium in Toronto, and you want to wait for the market to return for your condo to go up in value before you feel happy with that sale price, it's highly likely that if condo prices increase again, freehold property types will increase as well. And if they increase the same amount as the condo, the actual dollar value they increase will be more. So what I'm trying to get at with all of this is that if you are trying to upsize, it's better to do it in a sideways trading market or a market where prices are going down. Upsizing in a upwards trending market is actually more difficult because even though your property is going to guaranteed to sell, it's like the property you want to buy is also going up significantly in value. Number 2 is, should I sell this property first or should I buy the next property first? Because if I sell this one first, well, I don't want to feel like I'm on a timeline to buy my next property. But if I buy my next property first, what if I can't sell my current property in time? And then what do I do about financing? And this will sound a little bit extreme, but hear me out on this. What is scarier to you? Being homeless for a period of time or being broke for a period of time? because that will pretty much answer which decision you should make. If you buy the next property first and you need the funds from the current property, you are taking on a massive risk. If you cannot sell the current property that you have in time to line up those closing dates, you're going to have to go to private money. Private money to close is not fun to deal with. If you try to get out of the transaction, it's going to go to court and you're going to lose a lot of money over a long period of time. It's actually cheaper just to close on the property and resell it than going through that whole process. So my advice to like 95% of the people I'm meeting with here is always sell first if you're looking to upsize in today's marketplace. It was much different when I was giving this advice back in like really from like 2015 to like 2020. It was like, well, your property is going to sell, so might as well, you know, get what you want first, and then we can just sell this and line up the closing dates. Now it's not a guarantee. Now it's like, we got to make sure that this sells. You know exactly what you're getting before you go out and buy that next property. But even if you do it the safer way by selling first, well, what if you do sell first and you get a 60-day closing, then you go out and start viewing homes, but you bid on a few and you don't get them? That's how you have to have a backup plan. So it's like, worst case scenario if you sell first is, could you short term go live back with family? Which I know is not ideal for everybody, but is it an option for you? Could you do a 2-month rental at a property as you're doing your buyer search? Now, living with family, doing a 2-month rental, I understand those are not ideal, but I can assure you, if that's worst case scenario by selling first, it is a way better option than buying first and not being able to sell. The stress level that causes people is not worth it, in my opinion. Now, if you can buy your next property and not have to sell the current property, like you don't need any equity from your current property, then by all means, buy it first, right? But obviously run those numbers before you actually get out there and start making offers. We've also had a lot of clients ask us, hey, Tom, you know, even though we do think that we should sell first, could we make an offer on a property, making it conditional on the sale of our property? And the simple answer is, of course you could. The reality is at least in the city of Toronto, not too many sellers have been open to that, even though there's been changes in the market. It's a lot more common in markets outside the city of Toronto, because more than anything, they're just going to say like, well, what are you selling? What is it? And if they find out it's a condo in Toronto, most people understand it's not a great market. And usually those conditions are not like months at a time, right? They're like a few weeks. So not a lot of sellers are open to it. Not saying that some wouldn't be open to it, but it doesn't work as much as people think, at least here in the city of Toronto. The third thing you'll need to know if you're upsizing this year is, once you've met with your realtor, so this is what we do. We meet with people at their properties and we say to them, okay, now that I've seen your place, I'm going to send you a breakdown of your evaluation based on today's market. Whatever that number is, I'm actually going to give you a more conservative number that you should work with when you go to the mortgage broker, because this is where people start figuring things out. If they know, okay, my condo could sell for $650,000, I would say go to the mortgage broker and tell them like 625 or 600. Like, you always want to be more conservative with this number. If you say to them, okay, based on my current property selling for this, here's the additional down payment that we have, here's what our salaries look like, get pre-approved and get a mortgage broker or bank to tell you, based on this scenario, here's what the next property would look like. Here's what your budget would be, what you're approved for the next property you're buying. So let's recap. The timeline is really important. If you're doing it in the same market, it's somewhat relative based on what's happening in the overall market conditions, whether the market's hot, cool, or somewhere in the middle. Then you've decided, are you going to buy first or sell first? For 95% of people I'm currently talking to, selling first is the smarter option. Once you understand what your current property is valued at, give an even more conservative number than that to your mortgage professional, and they will let you know what your budget would be on the next property once this property is sold. And this takes us to step number 4. You're going to ask the realtor that's helping you sell the current property and buy the new one to get you set up on a property search. And even if you're not ready to buy that property yet, you still kind of want to see what's going on. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can just get the automatic emails every single morning when a property comes up that matches your criteria, but I'd highly recommend you also say to your real estate agent, hey, this is our current budget based on what the next property would look like. Can you also not just send me the new listings, but what's sold in the last 3 months in the area in our budget and send it to us? This is what we would call the reverse search. And when you get that reverse search, go through those properties and tell your realtor, hey, if I was ready then, I would have bought that one for that price. So then you're like really kind of locked in on exactly what you were looking for. You also want to make sure that you don't sell your property and then find out after the fact that I can't even get a house that I want in this budget. Like, you got to get all that prepared before you put your property on the market in the first place. And that would take us to the final step, number 5. Once you've figured out the first 4 steps, then you can actually list your property. Once you have a game plan in place, you can get your property on the market. Keep in mind, this year in the city of Toronto, it's likely that most properties that are selling could take anywhere between 30 and 45 days. You know, the market where things were selling in a week isn't really around anymore. So even if you price it correctly, it looks really damn good. It could still take some time. And a typical closing is anywhere from 30, but realistically 45 to 60 days. But that's from the day you sell it. So even if you listed it, if it took you 45 days to sell it, then your closing could be 60 days after that. So trying to line everything up. I like to give a bonus tip in these videos. So my bonus would be, make sure you understand your mortgage situation. So if you have 2 years left on a low mortgage rate, that's great. You can probably bring it over, but you might have to blend and extend if you need more money to get the next property that you are buying. Or if you've decided that you're breaking your current mortgage rate and you're starting a new mortgage for whatever reason, understanding what those breakage fees would look like. If you found this helpful, I'd appreciate you giving this video a like and maybe sharing it with a friend. We've helped a lot of people do exactly what I talked about in this video. I'm telling you all this from personal experience, what we know actually works to help people upsize here in the city of Toronto. My name's Tom Storey. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to go watch our video on how to sell your Toronto condo in a buyer's market when things are a little bit slower. There's tons of great tips there as well. And remember, home is where your story begins.